So United lost again. I would say it's getting bad, but it's been bad. It's been really, really bad. So far this season, they have losses to Arsenal, City, Grimsby Town, and Brentford. They're once again sitting in the bottom half of the table. Amorim still has yet to win back-to-back Premier League games, and it's been almost a year since he took over. The new signings that were supposed to breathe life into the club haven't looked that impressive. The other aging core players look worse and worse as time passes, and they seem to be stuck in a permanent, endless cycle of rebuilding. Rebuilds are some of the hardest things to accomplish in sports, and depending on which sport, it's even harder than others. In basketball, you can tank, lose as much as you want, get the highest chances of winning the lottery, and then hope you luck out and get the first pick, which gives you the chance to draft potentially generational talents. In American football, it's even easier because there is no lottery. The worse you are, the more you're rewarded. Worst record in the league, you get to choose the best college player to rebuild your team around. It's a good way to keep the leagues from being dominated by the same teams permanently. You give the shittiest franchises opportunities to get young stars every year. That doesn't mean there isn't poverty franchises. Some franchises are stuck in mediocrity jail because they're never good enough to make an actual playoff run and never bad enough to get high draft picks, so they're kind of just floating around in the middle forever. It's even worse if you're a small market team because you can't even use that to attract big stars in free agency. Franchises like the Bulls and Hawks are the faces of mediocrity. Too stubborn to tank, not good enough to be actual contenders. It makes rebuilding kinda impossible until they let their pride go. Rebuilding in football is so much different though, because you can't tank. There's no draft. You gotta get it out the mud yourself, bro. And if you let yourself get too terrible, you're getting relegated. That doesn't mean there's no bailouts. Plenty of struggling clubs have been bailed out by young academy superstars. Barcelona is the primest of prime examples. Do you know where they would be if La Masia didn't crap out Lamine and Kubarsi and Gavi and the numerous other talents that have been core parts of the club? They were heading for a dark, dark place post-Messi. Their pockets, empty. All their legends either washed, declining, or gone. The debt, increasing. Their talent factory is the most consistently reliable bailout of all time. Palmer's not from Cobham, but he bailed out Chelsea, which is kind of funny because they're not even really out of their dark period. He's surrounded by straight bozos currently, besides like a few other standouts in the squad. They're still not good overall, and that defense, yuck. Without him though, if they never made that signing, it would be beyond hideous. Getting lucky with an elite young player is probably the most common way that clubs get out of the mud. Even Arsenal's recent rebuild was spearheaded by academy players before players like Saliba and Rice joined the party. Saka and Smith Rowe were bright lights in an ugly period for the club, and even though only one of them fully made it into the better era, they'll both always be remembered as the players that kickstarted the rebirth. When you can't use the academy, then you have to have a manager with insane talent ID or else you're not getting anywhere. Klopp's Liverpool rebuild is the pinnacle of elite rebuilds because sure, he spent a lot in those first few years, but it was also alarmingly well spent. Summer 2015, he got Firmino for 41 million and Milner for free. Summer 2016, he got Mane for 41 million. Then came summer 2017 when he got Salah for 42 million, Oxlade-Chamberlain for 38, Robertson for less than 10. And then in the winter, after the Coutinho sale, they got Van Dijk for over 80 million before grabbing Alisson for 72 million in the summer and Fabinho for 45 million. He wasn't just splashing money on any and everything like Mourinho's Chelsea, for example, or current Chelsea. Mourinho's Chelsea had a much better hit rate than current Chelsea, to be fair, and his summer splashes were much less random and desperate, but the point is that when the club might not have unlimited money to spend, having a manager with a great eye is key. It wasn't the first time either. Klopp rebuilt Dortmund right before that too. They were 13th the season before he joined. He signed Gundogan, Royce, Aubameyang, and Lewandowski in his time there and famously won 2 titles before he left. Looking back at Manchester United, not only have they made a lot of question mark signings for the most part, but they also have clearly struggled with incorporating some of their best youth. And I don't see how you're going to complete a rebuild when you're muddling up the 2 biggest avenues to doing so. The last time they looked like a great team was in the 22-23 season under Ten Hag. That's not to say they didn't have glaring flaws, and to be honest, a lot of them were covered up by Rashford's heroism that season. They came in third though, made it to a couple domestic finals and won one of them, losing the other to one of the greatest teams of the last decade. Then you move to the 23-24 season and they signed a striker from the Serie A who only had 9 goals, an injury-stricken Chelsea player who just had his worst season, and to top it all off, fell for the World Cup purple patch Ponzi scheme and got Amrabat. They also signed Onana, but to be honest, that wasn't a bad signing at the time. Not many people predicted how much of a disaster that would be. The entire season was a disaster, to be honest. Got grouped in embarrassing fashion in one of the easier Champions League groups that year. Rashford fell off a cliff after having his best season. Højlund started off slow as hell and he picked it up later in the season, but it wasn't enough. I will say Diogo Dalot was one of United's better players in that season, if not their best one, despite how horrific he's been since. And McTominay had his moments before his eventual departure the next summer. Overall, though, it was a huge letdown. They finished 8th, and clearly something big needed to change, right? So what did they do? Signed an 18-year-old center back that wanted to go to Madrid, a freight train that pees his pants under the slightest bit of pressure, and another Serie A striker. This time one that managed 11 whole goals. How exhilarating. De Ligt was probably the best signing of the summer for them, or actually Mazraoui, to be honest, especially when you consider how good he's been compared to his price. It was still a shitty squad overall, though. 2 main strikers and neither of them can shoot to save their life. Zirkzee was 6'4", yet somehow ass in the air. He was slow as shit, and yes, he was a good playmaker, but it was obvious that the Premier League was too fast for him at some points, and he really only showed flashes of his potential last season. Meanwhile, Højlund had the touch of a rabid hippopotamus, and he was so busy German suplexing center backs in the box for 2 straight years that he looked like a fish out of water every time he tried to do literally anything in the box. On one hand, you can't fully blame him because he didn't get that many chances created for him, but that's also partially on him. His movement, positioning, IQ, box presence, and like I said before, his first touch are all so ass that he didn't help himself much either. Unlike Zirkzee, he sucked holding up the ball too, so there just wasn't much he was good for whatsoever. Casemiro, washed. Ugarte is really only good for tackling. A few injury problems. Rashford unable to recreate his 2022 form, and then to top it all off, they hire a manager with an extremely rigid system that does not at all suit the players he has at his disposal. The 15th place finish shouldn't have been a surprise, even though it still was, because most people have never seen United close to finishing that low. I'm going to be honest, Amorim was a mistake. Any manager with a very specific and rigid system would have been a mistake. I'm not saying he's not a good manager or he can't be a good manager, but he's not the manager for a rebuild. In a league like the Prem or any of the other best leagues, his 3-4-3 or whatever you want to call it is probably only likely to work with an already solid team of established players, preferably ones he handpicked. Managers with freaky systems aren't usually best for rebuilding teams that often have young talents that need to develop. That's how you end up with a talent like Diallo regularly being pushed to wingback. Why the fuck is one of your best young attackers doing wingback shifts? Then you have the Mainu situation. He barely plays, and it's been implied that it's because Amorim doesn't want to fit him in there as a starter. In his system, he doesn't think he can play next to Bruno, and he thinks he's his backup. This is a kid with numerous elite performances for United in big cup games in the past. He came on for England at the Euros as a teenager and was actually solid. You're telling me you can play almost everybody out of position, but you can't find anything for him to do? Dead ass? Again, this is my problem with bringing a stubborn, rigid manager into a squad with multiple important youth talents. If you don't perfectly align with the way he views things, you're going to get shafted, and that can lead to problems with his development. He's 20 years old. This is the most crucial stage of his career. Even if Amorim was the greatest coach in the history of the planet, he still would struggle with this United team. If you gave Barcelona Pep this United squad and he tried to implement his tiki-taka, they would get Ricky relegated. Ugarte feels a bit of pressure and boots the ball in any fucking direction his foot can send it in. Don't make me laugh, bruh. There's a reason we've never really seen Pep attempt to take over a shit team, and the teams he manages regularly spend obscene amounts of money. If the quality dips below elite, then Pep's tactics can't really work. Amorim's system is for an elite squad, not a struggling rebuilding squad in an otherwise top league. It works fine in Portugal, but the Premier League is an entire different animal. I hate to treat the young players like make-a-wish kids, but that's the reality of things. These players need adaptable systems as they enter the top level. It's not good to be playing them out of position and making them see the game in one specific way when they just got here. Even with the vets, it's a problem. You watched the Brentford game the other day, and almost everyone on the pitch by the end of the match is playing out of position in some way, shape, or form. And it's because Amorim is stubborn. I'm sorry. He's got attacking midfielders playing deep, forwards with elite potential at wingback, fullbacks who can't cross at wingback, slow-ass center backs in a back three playing a high line. It's a mess, bro. He can't play to anybody's strengths. The academy issue also isn't just with Amorim either. Ten Hag got rid of Carreras and he instantly exploded and then ended up being snatched up by Real Madrid this year. Maybe not the best timing because he just had a shit show against Atletico, but overall he's been good since being sold. The entire club has been one big car crash for years, and honestly, if they're serious about correcting this, they got to get rid of Amorim before they lose some of the only good talents they have left at the moment. It might sound a bit harsh, but some players that a lot of their fans have grown fond of kinda gotta go. Normally when a rebuild has failed multiple times, that's a sign to clean house and actually start over. Maybe that's what they were trying to do with Rashford, and to be honest, I actually agree with that move. Not because Rashford is washed, but I always said on this channel that I doubt he'd ever be able to revive his career at United specifically. A guy like Rashford isn't someone you wait on forever, specifically at Manchester United. In my opinion, it's never going to fully work out there. There's too much mentally going on there between him and the club, him and the fans, him and the media, and in my personal opinion, it's not possible for him to mentally overcome all of it there. He's someone who I'd say would need a move. Even now when he's been pretty good for Barca, the English media is still relentlessly harassing him, and it's getting alarming and honestly kind of pathetic. They've tried starting over while keeping Bruno as their core a few times now, and I think Bruno is extremely talented, but eventually his time is going to come, and when it does, I think that's going to be what actually signals the start of a new era. Current United kind of reminds me of my Knicks in the last Melo years. Melo was our star for a while, and we had quite a few great moments with him. We barely ever actually put an elite team around him, though, and even though we had moments here or there in the past where it looked like there was a chance we could make a run, those days were long gone. The best co-star he had ever had was shipped out after a few injury issues and a broken relationship with the franchise, even though the difference there is that it was slightly after Melo left. It was clear that the days of having a chance at contending were long gone, and his last couple years in New York were miserable, losing seasons as the aging Melo slowly declined. After they shipped out both him and Porzingis, it was a careful process over the next years after they cleaned house as they sunk to all-time lows with a 17-win season. It was careful and smart trades and free agent signings that brought the Knicks back to life. Signing Randall, who developed into an all-star in New York and got them back into the playoffs, then signing Brunson while he was still a role player and he exploded into a star. Now, after key additions over the years like Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, and OG Anunoby, the Knicks were just 2 wins away from the finals last season, but once again, it required letting go of someone they held dear. Sending Randall and Dante to Minnesota for Cat hurt a lot of Knicks fans, but Cat was a central and crucial piece in the playoff run where they beat the champs and got the Knicks the furthest they've been in decades. I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of United fans want to rebuild where they get to hold on to at least most of their favorites, and in some cases that can work, but in a lot of other cases it won't. You got to know when to let go of players you hold close to your heart. Sometimes the environment isn't meant for them anymore. Sometimes you just need a true fresh start and it's time to build around a different player. I don't think he's bad by any means, but the writing might be on the wall for Bruno, and in my opinion, it should have been for Amorim a while ago. I don't know why they didn't take the $100 million for him if Amorim was just going to play him out of position for most of the season again anyway. What do you think is United's biggest issue? Let me know in the comments. New video coming soon. Catch y'all next time.